and WWE superstars who went from zero to hero. We see them under the bright lights of WrestleMania, million-dollar contracts, global fame, and action figures in every toy store. To the outside world, WWE superstars lived a charmed life. But for many, that ring wasn't a starting point. It was a finish line of grueling, heartbreaking marathon. For the pyro and legion of fans, there was hunger, there were evictions, there was nights living in car, wondering if the dream was worth the pain. Today, we are not just looking at the legends, we are looking at the survivors. We are counting down 10 iconic WWE superstars who started with literally $0 in their pockets and scratched, clawed, and suffered their way to the absolute top of the industry. These are the definitive zero to hero stories that prove the greatest victories happen long before the three counts. Number 10. Jinder Mahal. We kick the things off with a man whose story was as dramatic as his character's transformation. Jinder was in WWE, but he was barely treading water. Used primarily as a jobber to put others over, and he was released in year 2014. This wasn't just a career setback, it was a personal collapse. Mahal has spoken candidly about hitting rock bottom. He stopped training, ate poor, and sank into the depression. His bank account dwindling as his dreams faded. He was, by his own admission, lost. But something clicked. He realized nobody was going to save him but himself. Jinder completely overhauled his lifestyle. He got into the best shape of his life and rebuilt his confidence on the independent circuit. The WWE called him back and he was ready. He went from a forgotten afterthought to shocking the world by defeating the Viper Randy Orton for the WWE Championship from rock bottom to the mountain top. Number 9. Cesaro. At number 9, we salute the hardest working man in any room, and that is Cesaro. Before he was the Swiss Superman, he was just visionary kid from Switzerland with a dream that seemed impossible. Europe had no major wrestling infrastructure, and if he wanted to make it, he had to go to America. He arrived with next to nothing. We are talking about years spent on the grueling US independent scene, wrestling in high school gyms and flea markets for gas money, often sleeping on promoters' couches or in his car just to make the next town. His struggle wasn't about being fired. It was about the slow grind of being denied. For years, critics and major promotion told him he lacked charisma because English wasn't his first language, but his in-ring brilliance was undeniable. He simply refused to stop being a best wrestler in the world until they had to notice him. His success is a masterclass in professional resilience. Number 8. Matt Riddle. Our number 8 spot belongs to a superstar whose path was uniquely violent, and his name is Matt Riddle. Riddle's story starts not with poverty but with the public execution of his first career. He was a highly successful UFC fighter, but his recurring issues with marijuana back when the UFC took a harder stance led to him being publicly fired by Dana White. White told the reporters that Matt Riddle is a loser who would never amount to anything. Overnight, Matt Riddle went from a professional athlete to an outcast. He had a family to support and no clear path forward. His natural charisma and freakish athleticism shone through. He reinvented himself, go clean, and forced WWE to take a look at the bro everyone had written off. From being blacklisted by UFC to becoming a major WWE superstar. Number 7. Ronda Rousey. Number 7 is global icon, but his origin story is pure grit. Ronda Rousey. Before she revolutionized women's combat sports, Ronda was an Olympic gold medalist in judo, a sport that offered prestige but very little money. After the Olympics, she fell into a deep void. She has detailed this time in her autobiography. She worked as a bartender, struggled with emotional issues, and for a period, she was literally homeless, living out of her Honda Accord. Honda described that car as her bedroom, closet, and safe space. She survived on Greek until she discovered MMA. She didn't just succeed in MMA, but she also built women's division in Strikeforce and then UFC by the sheer force of her will and marketability. That unparalleled success is what made her an absolute must-have attraction for WWE from a Honda Accord to main eventing WrestleMania. Number 6, Shawn Michaels. Number 6 is a legend who defined an entire era, but his early days were anything but legendary. The Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is synonymous with WWE success, but his zero moment happened at the very start of his WWE career. He and Marty Jannetty, as the Midnight Rockers, were the hottest tag team in AWA. WWE back in WWF called them and they signed their dream contracts. This is the famous story. One night in WWF, they got into a bar fight that they didn't start. Vince McMahon, needing to show the authority, immediately fired them. This was devastating. They left AWA and they had no income. They had publicly failed their first big chance. Shawn Michaels has talked about being flat broke, embarrassed, and having to beg his way back onto the small regional territories just to survive and rebuild their reputation. It took time and humility. But that failure forged the unmatched chip on his shoulders intensity that eventually made HBK the greatest in-ring performer of all time. Number 5, Sheamus. Entering the top 5, we have a man who defines brutality. Sheamus is a WWE Grand Slam champion, but hero status was earned the hard way. He spent years laboring on the European independent circuit, particularly in his native land, Ireland. These weren't glitzy shows. We are talking about wrestling in community centers where the pay barely covered his travel costs. During this time, Sheamus had to maintain multiple physically demanding real-world jobs just to keep a roof over his head. He worked as an IT technician, a bodyguard for the celebrities visiting Dublin, and famously, he was essentially living paycheck to paycheck using every pure moment and rent and sent to travel and hone his Celtic warrior craft. He didn't have a safety net, he only had his massive size and relentless work ethic. Number 4, Dave Batista. Our number 4 story is about a man who was fighting just to survive long before he was an Avenger, Dave Batista. Batista's backstory is perhaps the darkest in this list. He grew up in poverty in Washington, D.C. and was self-described troubled kid. By 17, he was living on his own, estranged from his parents. His physicality was only his currency. He became a nightclub bouncer, a job that frequently turned violent. He has publicly stated that during his time as a bouncer, he broke two men's faces in self-defense and he was arrested and narrowly avoided jail time. He was lost, broke, and angry. Pro wrestling was desperate. Last minute pivot suggested by a friend. When he tried out for WCW, they famously told him he would never make it as a wrestler. He took the rejection and went to WWE's development territory, OVW. He then dedicated to prove the WCW rejection wrong, from a desperate nightclub bouncer to one of the Hollywood's most successful actors. Number 3, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The top 3 begins with the most famous man on all of entertainment, but his story is the definition of this video's theme. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. We all know the story, but it never stops being powerful. Before he was The Rock and he failed as a football player, he got cut from the Canadian Football League CFL and his dream of being an NFL player were crushed. He had to call his father to get a ride home to Tampa, Florida. When he got in the car, he looked in his wallet and saw that he had exactly $7 to his name. No savings, no prospects, just $7 and broken dreams. He went to his father's world, wrestling, not because it was his dream, but because he was desperate. WWE gave him chance and he failed again as the hated babyface Rocky Maivia Fans chanted Rocky sucks. He was the best. It was only when he embraced the hate, became arrogant, and he turned himself into the Rock that the legend was born. From $7 to owning his own media empire, $7 Productions. That was The Rock. Number 2, Daniel Bryan. One number 2 spot belongs to perhaps the most unlikely WWE champion of all time, the ultimate underdog, Daniel Bryan, right now known as Bryan Danielson. For over a decade, Daniel Bryan was told, no, no, you are too small. No, you are not charismatic. No, you will never be a WWE main eventer. Bryan was a legend on the independent circuit, the absolute king of the Ring of Honor. But the only problem was he wasn't rich. He has spoken about spending over 10 years driving himself thousands of miles between shows and sleeping in the motors that charged by the hour or just in his car and barely making enough money to cover food and basic living expenses. He was a pro wrestler by definition, but his life was that of a vagabond. He signed with WWE and was immediately saddled with goofy gimmicks like being part of NXT Season 1 with The Miz as his mentor, but he just kept wrestling. He kept outperforming everyone on the roster until the Yes Movement made it impossible for WWE to ignore him. From a homeless master wrestler to the voice of an entire generation. Number 1, Damian Priest. Taking the number 1 spot is the man who truly understands what it means to live on the edge, the usher of infamy, Damian Priest. Damian Priest's road to World Heavyweight Championship wasn't just long, it was nearly impossible. Before the global stardom, he was a man struggling with his own identity and his weight. He had revealed that during the early days, he hit a point of total desperation where he was literally homeless. He lived on the streets and slept on the steps of a church in New York because he had nowhere to go. He also worked as a bouncer in nightclubs and strip clubs just to scrap together enough money to eat, not knowing where his next meal was coming from. He described that time as his normal life, a cycle of survival where wrestling felt like a distant 50% effort. The turning point came when he was given an ultimatum at work: quit wrestling for a steady paycheck or keep the dreams and lose the job. He chose the dream. He lost over 160 pounds and dedicated himself to the craft. He clawed his way through the indies to finally get his shot. From living on the streets and sleeping on the steps of church to cashing in at WrestleMania and becoming the World Heavyweight Champion. The Rock's $7, Dave Bautista's arrest, and Ronda Rousey's Honda, they didn't succeed despite their struggle. They succeeded because of them. That's what a hero is. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon for the upcoming videos. And please let me know what story you find more inspiring from zero to hero. And now I will leave and will see you in the next video.